Hello.
Thanks for coming for the picnic.
Thanks for having me.
Now, it's been a bit weird because I've kept running into you.
Yes.
And it was like, the first time I ran into you, it was quite nice because we were feeling a bit lonely. It's like, oh, someone we know.
Oh, yeah.
Keith Farnan. Then I ran into you again. We were going to go and see Kerry Marks,
Yeah.
and you were there as well. It's like, oh no, it's maybe getting a bit awkward now.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we should probably go and see his show. But then it's like, we've seen you 3 days in a row. Is that? And I was worried that you might think that we're stalking you.
No, because every day seems like a week here, so it feels like I haven't seen you for ages. Because it was like yesterday, but I feel like I've been through a lifetime since then. So no, nobody ever feels, unless you're literally attached to me like a little koala. No, which is just unless you're like literally just hanging off me and tweeting as you do it. That's stalking. That's stalking here in Edinburgh. You get away with anything up here.
But no, it was genuinely nice to see you.
I'm going to have one of these biscuits because you got Jaffa cakes and they're awful. I hate orange chocolate. I hate them. Because it's just an awful taste. Like, it's like banana chocolate. I don't understand it.
You don't like the combination of the two?
No, I like chocolate and I like orange, but when you put them together, nah, it's just wrong. Also, it's Jaffa cakes. You know, they're a nickname for Protestants in Jaffas.
Oh, right.
So
No, I didn't know.
Slightly controversial choice here.
See, we're
and custard creams are a name for Catholics. That's
mixing it up.
That's an absolute lie. I'm so full of it.
But we did go and see your show last night. It was very good. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
But it was it the weirdest show that you've done so far?
Yeah, let's talk about this because I need therapy. It's not the weirdest. It's close to the weirdest. Yes, it's the weirdest show I've ever done. That was the weirdest Edinburgh show. No, it wasn't the weirdest. It was just the most sort of intense. Because I had this one joke in the middle of the show, and this woman just blurted out she thought it was offensive. And I don't just like to, I'm not one of those comedians who just goes, shut up. I'd like to engage and kind of go, okay, let's see what's offensive about it. So I engaged with her and I discussed it with her. And at the end of it, I realized, you know what, I couldn't really, if you're offended, you're offended. I can't change that. You have been offended. Like, that's the thing about society. It's great. You can be offended. You're free to be offended. But I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to change my joke. I'm not going to apologize. But I will, allow you the freedom to leave, which I gave her. I said, you're offended, I respect that. I didn't let the crowd get on top of her, because sometimes comedians are like, let's get her. I'm like, no, I like to control my mob. If I have a mob, I like to control it. And I said to her, okay, you are free to leave. You can go. And then she didn't go, and then I got angry, because then I was like, hang on. You're offended enough that you want to stop my show. Just stop my show, Dad.
Because it was completely just like everyone was just silent.
Absolutely. Because when somebody perks up in a show that everyone's sort of laughing along at and go they're offended, then everybody kind of feels bad. Immediately they feel guilty. Should I have laughed at that? And they sort of burst the bubble that you're creating in the comedy moment. And she burst that, and I said, okay, you were so offended enough to be the one to stop my show, like literally throw it off the rails, but you're not offended enough to leave the show. And that's what upset me the most. And then I just had to get on with my show. But it's the hardest thing in the world to sort of, I think my show was like running at 50 minutes or 55, and then it was up to an hour, and now it was like an hour and 10 minutes, because I think 10 minutes of it was me just going, I don't understand it, and I've had this before, and I like it in a way. I do like it because it makes me think, and it brings me into the room, and I'm not just repeating a show. I'm like, I have to think through everything quickly. Like I had a show on feminism, and it was a fucking good show, and it really explored the issue of what it means to be, what the value of a woman is. But at one stage during the show, I said to a woman, I asked a question, who here knows what country in the world has the most women in a parliament? And a woman put up her hand, and I said to her, what's your name, my dear? And I just said it like that, because I didn't know her name, and she said, it's Marina, and don't call me my dear. And I'm like, oh my god. And I spent the entire show stuck in that point of the show going, was I wrong to call her my dear? What would I call you? Like, if I was talking to one of the guys, I'd say, hey fella, buddy. There's just nothing with a woman. Like, do I say madame? Because then I'm implying that she's a brothel owner. I mean, maybe I should have just said you there. It sounds rude. I was trying to be nice and charming and the usual, and it really threw me. The whole show, it was in my head. So this time I was determined not to go on. And then towards the end, 2 minutes to go, she actually left. She left the show with 2 minutes to go before the ending, and just threw my ending. And what's amazing is that it turns out it was another comedian's mother, and he's still alive. And he's still alive only thanks to my good grace, and because he's smaller than me, and I could take him.
So it's so it's really important for you that you don't just ignore it completely.
Yeah.
That it's an integral part.
No, it's not. I mean, if somebody's listening to me and if they're engaged with it and they say something or ask a question or do anything, well then that's great. I get to engage with them there. You know,
Did it make
we lead lonely lives. I like to talk to people even if it's in a show.
Do you have to look at that joke now and consider it and think about well, is it actually offensive or no,
not at all. No, because in my head I made the argument, and then bits of the argument I didn't make I thought of later on. So that'll never happen again. But if it does, I'm ready for it. Yeah. Because I mean, when you say how do you separate the funny people from the not so funny people, you say that's how the Holocaust started. Which is the joke. That's the thing. I was asked in an interview, how do you separate the funny people from the not so funny people? I said, you know, you shouldn't do that. That's how the Holocaust started. Two things I'm saying: you shouldn't do that. Second of all, when the Germans came to Berlin, they did use the actors and the Equity Register or whatever it was called to track down not just the Jews but the homosexuals and sort of earmark them. Like, so in a way, you know, there was a delineation between the not so funny people, the Nazis, and the funny people, you know, the Jews and the actors and those who were gay in the community. And also, I mean, famously, Sammy Davis Jr., when he was in Germany for the first time, this Jewish entertainer, was asked by, like, the German ambassador, you know, why don't we have more funny people like you in this country? And he turned to them and he said, well, you killed them all. Which is a very famous quote. And, you know, anyone who's Jewish knows this quote. Sort of in my head, what I did after that show was, my head was sort of going back and going, where did that joke come from? You know, where did it, and that, for me, I think those 2 points, that the factual thing of, yes, actually, the artists were tracked down. They were the first because they were the most openly sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? They were not conformist. They were not vagrants. What's the deviants? They were deviants in the eyes of the Aryan master race because they were these performers and they were, you know, and some of them, you know, the Germans liked and they survived most of the war, but a lot of them didn't, you know.
Was there... I think probably the issue for her was that it was inappropriate to have that anywhere in any context in a
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to what it was appropriate for her or not. So I really can't take that question.
Okay. Yeah. But I think maybe people are sensitive around just a topic being brought up.
Maybe.
Perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you know, certainly there's topics, but there was other topics brought up in relation to things in society that you know, people sort of let slide by. And yeah, maybe for certain people there's just buttons you push and you don't realise you're pushing them, you know. I mean, there have been gigs where I've said something that's totally inoffensive, I think, and people have gone, you can't say that, and I'm like, really? You know, like and it depends, like, yeah, like I had a gig recently where I have this, I talk about God in Ireland and what it's like having the Irish God, etc. And somebody heckled me, and it was a riff. And somebody heckled me and said, why don't you talk about Allah? Because he was a Polish Catholic and he found it offensive. So I had to break down the history of Catholicism in Ireland, and then in context of Poland, and how Polish people are still very devout, and that's wonderful, and I hope they never have the experience we have, which was of being absolutely betrayed by the thing we trusted the most. You know, and I engaged with that and I broke it down. and then I don't think I was very clever with my ending with him. You know, last night was quite clever because it's the Edinburgh Festival, but I think that was a Jongleurs Comedy Club, and I think I punched him into the ground a bit. Oh, I did, because you know what he did then? He said, why don't you talk about Allah? And I said, you know, I didn't grow up under Allah. I'm sure there'll be a Muslim comedian will do that one day, but I grew up under God, and this is what I'm talking about. And then he shouted, what about the suicide bombers? And this was, you know, isn't this long ago, so people are still quite raw after Woolwich and everything like that. I know that wasn't a bomb, but people are upset and there's anger out there. And I stopped them and I said, right, let's talk about, you know, bombers who are immigrants and who anger the society. Because 20 years ago, that was me. If I was standing on stage as an Irishman 20 years ago, that's all I'm getting. So you got to understand that society's changed. People change, things move on. So I'm here, you know, and you're here, and maybe in 20 years things will have changed again. And then I said something not so clever about his mother.
We should mention your show. It's called Fear, and it's at the...
It's called Fear Itself.
Fear
We've
Itself.
Not Fear, but Fear Itself. Jesus, Mother of God. You want to start this again? Do some research? You went to the show. What did you think I was talking about the whole time? Oh my god!
But it's about fear.
Try again.
And it's at the Underbelly at
6:20. 6:20 p.m. What time did you get there? Did you just turn up and go?
It's been a long.
I don't know what's going on. What's going on? The show's called Fear. 6 o'clock. 6:20. Fear itself.
It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.